Thanks, Mike. I think hopefully everyone can hear me okay. I don't have the booming voice that Brian does, so I'm going to try to stand by the microphone a little bit more closely and see if I can figure this thing out. Okay. So I'm going to talk about trout and salmon recreational fisheries in Lake Ontario. Lake Ontario has amazing diversity of trout and salmon, six species in Lake Ontario with trophy sizes, largest in the Great Lakes. It's an extremely important fishery. I'm just going to talk about some of the status of our each of our individual species, describe where and when you can fish for these and where catch rates are the highest, and then show some data from some of our weirs that monitor the returns of salmon at some of our more important rivers. So, Lake Ontario offers a world-class trophy trout and salmon fishery with an amazing diversity of species. Um, and it's also an incredibly important economic value to the local communities. Just based on a study in New York, as our Lakewide Angler Survey, Lake Ontario embayments and tributaries provide over 2.4 million angler days, worth an estimated $564 million. And of that, about 42% of that are anglers fishing for cold water fisheries, and that's contributing about $240 million to the local economy. So extremely important. We also have some impressive fisheries in and near urban areas such as Toronto, around piers, docks, and streams, and these provide opportunities for uh, public that don't necessarily encounter and utilize these resources. So Ontario has been working on providing the public with information to access these resources, including novice anglers, trying to recruit and educate through things like Learn to Fish programs, collaborations with TRCA and FMZ, Zone 20 Council. These are just two examples. One was put out by OMNR, just listing all of the different places you can fish around the Toronto area and some of the species that you might fish for. The other is TRCA has put together this um, application online where people can go and report where they see salmon, and then people can access those places where they can go and actually fish for those salmon. So I thought that was pretty neat. Ontario is also trying to create more fishing opportunities by changing some of the regulations. They're creating new opportunities near urban centers. One is at the Ganaraska River. They've changed the fishing season, opened the fishing season from October 15th through December 31st, before it was previously closed in these sections. Oops, sorry. Um, They've also implemented a creel starting in 2024 for 3 years. Since as of last year, they observed over 1,500 anglers during this period. It's a very accessible fishery. The age ranges from 9 to up to 87, and 36% of those anglers were new to tributary fishing. So and also those anglers were from across Ontario, Quebec, and US. So within Toronto, but also from other areas. I'm just going to switch to talking about some of our individual species and where and when fishing rates are highest and where you can fish for these species. Chinook salmon are the most sought after species on Lake Ontario and the most caught. An average of 50% of the Chinook caught in lake result from wild reproduction, but this can be as high as 75% or more. We've had some record high catch rates in recent years. In 2025, fishing season started out sort of slow. This graph shows in the blue bars shows this year's catch rate in fish per boat trip, and then the black dots provide the mean of the last 10 years. So in each of the different lake areas going from west to east. So in spring, April, May of 2025, catch rates were actually below average in the west areas. Typically in the west area, you can access Chinook in the west, and then it declines as you go eastward. In 2025, it was low in the west section. Improved in June and July, and then by August, September, fishing was actually above average. A lot of these boats had to move offshore though, and because of that, they were catching a lot of age 1s and 2s instead of 3s. Overall, Chinook fishing in 2025 relative to the last 40 years was the seventh highest on record, slightly below the last 10 years. But you can see that the fishing quality has improved over time. Starting in around 2003, it jumped up to a new level. We think because of increased natural reproduction, and we started penning our fish and acclimating those fish for release, and that increased their survival. And then starting at around 2016, we've jumped up to a new level. So for the last 7 out of the last 10 years, we've had these record high catch rates. In 2025, it was down around the average for the last 10 years, but it's still extremely high level. One of the places that we can monitor Chinook returns is at the Fishway at the Credit River, which Mike Ewell talked about yesterday in his talk. He showed the work that they're doing with machine learning and counting these fish as they go through their Fishway. Starting in 2019, fish have been allowed to go above the Streetsville Dam, which has provided an additional 25 kilometers of habitat. And you can see in 2023, the counts there have increased and have remained higher since then. So those additional 25 kilometers of habitat may have opened up a new opportunity for natural reproduction. We're already at around 50 to 75% natural reproduction. This may have increased that level, and based on our recent parentage-based tagging results, which is estimating natural reproduction in Lake Ontario currently, we're seeing even higher levels, upwards of 90%. And so essentially in Lake Ontario, we're managing a wild fishery supplemented with stockfish. We also monitor the size of Chinook salmon. In 2025, it increased, averaged around 20.1 pounds, but we're measuring fish up to 28 pounds. So there's a wide variation of those H3 fish. It's 1.4 pounds below the long-term average. But overall, I mean, we think we're in a pretty good place. Being able to catch an average of a 20-pound 3-year-old is we think, a good place to be. Our abundance is high, but also our size is a reasonable size to support that trophy fishery. Tournaments are becoming increasingly popular. You can find a tournament almost every weekend. These are data from 2 of our most prominent tournaments, the Greater Ontario Salmon Derby on the North Shore, the LOC Derby on the South Shore in red. And over time, you can see the size has decreased, came up a little bit in 2025. But really, the number of 30-pound fish is really impressive. In 2025, it also, the size increased in the tournaments as well, but the number of 30-pound fish was upwards of 40 fish just in these 2 tournaments alone. Moving on to coho salmon. Coho are a smaller component of the offshore fishery, ranking 6th most caught. Coho are typically caught in the spring, especially in the west, and then show up again in the east in August and September. In 2025, coho catch rates were extremely high. You can see on the left there in April and May, well above average. And they were also present all year. Overall catches were second highest on record, 106% higher than the 10-year average. So catch rates in Ontario this past spring, were also reported to be very good, although they don't have a creel survey that's conducted annually. Coast salmon migrates tributaries for spawning in the fall. In Ontario, the largest runs are in the Ganaraska River, Credit, and Duffins, with smaller runs at least at 7 other tributaries. Around 15,000 were caught in 2015. In New York, 88% of the catch is at Salmon River, with smaller runs at 18 Mile, Oak Orchard, and 15 other tributaries. They range from about 4.5 to 31,000 per year. As you can see in this graph, which shows just the tributary catch estimates on the Salmon River in gray, and then blue in the other tributaries, we're down a bit in the last few years. The run at the Ganaraska River at the Fishway again was actually has been increasing, and in 2025 it was one of the highest they've observed over the last 10 years. Now we know, based on a marketing study we did on coho, about 40% of the coho salmon are wild. We don't really know what the source is, but this is an interesting illustration of in the Salmon River, the coho runs are down, but in the Ganaraska River, the runs are up, which suggests perhaps the Ganaraska is providing some natural reproduction as well. We used to think that in Canada, the contribution of wild fish was fairly small compared to places like the Salmon River, but I'm retracting my previous statements. I won't tell you what those statements were, frankly. Brown trout are the second most caught species in New York and Ontario. They're a more minor component of the boat fishery. Anglers fish from shore around piers. However, really, they're available all year and can be targeted around the thermocline near the bottom in the summer and fall. In New York, brown trout are especially targeted in the spring in the Central and East Lake areas. So when Chinook are not always available on the East Lake areas, as I talked about before, anglers especially target brown trout in those areas. And the catch rates are upwards of 4 per hour. And for example, in the East Central area in 2025, they were well above average in those West Central and East Central areas. They were down in the East areas. And then but overall, spring fishing was excellent. The seasonal mean catch rates are 61% above average. Brown trout spawn in the fall. Catch rates are highest in October, November, and April. These are just some catch rates from some of our tributaries on the west end, where catch rates are the highest, which is interesting because harvest is in the lake is highest in the east areas, but the returns to the tributaries are highest in the west, which is, imagine that. You might think that might be something related to harvest there in the lake. This is just illustrating some catch rates, some of our most prominent tributaries: 18 Mile Creek, Maxwell, Sandy, Irondequoit, and Oak Orchard, in the different colors. I mean, you look at some of these catch rates, 1 per hour. That's like bass level catch rates. And this is not just, that means you can go into a tributary like this, fish for 5 hours, and catch 5 brown trout. And I'm not talking about brown trout like this. I'm talking about brown trout like the guy is holding there. So amazing fishery. The catch estimate in October 2025 alone at 18 Mile was 22,000 fish caught. So the fishery is in a good spot right now. Steelhead, smaller component of the fishery. They're typically not very targeted in the New York side as much as on the Canadian side. But when they are targeted, that's usually occurring in June and July. If Chinook aren't available, anglers can go offshore and target these species where they occupy the offshore waters. In August and September of 2025, catch rates were extremely high. I think that is related to somewhat to, as I mentioned before, Chinook were offshore this year, which is unusual in August, September. Usually they're closer to shore, and because of that offshore fishing, anglers were getting into steelhead and then catching steelhead at the time. So we saw a lot higher catch rate. Overall, seasonal catch rates were slightly above average. In our tributaries, rainbow trout enter tributaries in the fall, but they hold over and spawn in the spring of every year. In New York, Salmon River is the premier steelhead fishery, but many other tributaries also provide excellent catches. Catch rates have been stable, although in the last 3 years, this winter, the steelhead fishery has reportedly been excellent. At the Ganaraska River, catches have been, or sorry, at the Fishway, counts have been above average. Moving on to lake trout. Lake trout are often targeted when other more preferred species are not available. So again, when Chinook fishing is good, catch rates for lake trout usually go up. In 2025, they were below average, which maybe that's a good thing because that meant fishing for these other more preferred species was really good. Coho and brown trout fishing in the spring was also very good. Chinook and steelhead fishing quality in August, September took the pressure off lake trout. Overall, the seasonal catch rate was 51% below average. And then Atlantic salmon is our other native species in Lake Ontario. They're also caught all year, but especially high in the spring. They're mixed in with brown trout on the near shore. You can see in the April-May panel that catch rates range from 1.6 to 13 times higher than average. And then throughout the whole season, they remained high. Now, in New York, we implemented a new management plan starting in around 2022. Stocking increased from 50,000 to 200,000 yearlings. In Ontario, stocking is now focused on yearlings. Previously, there was a lot of stocking of earlier life stages. They moved to stocking fall yearlings and yearlings. And then both agencies have moved towards strategy of stocking the fish downstream near the lake to maybe remove that stream survival bottleneck. And it seems to be working. In 2025, our catch rates were 260% above the 10-year average. Now, catch rates are still relatively low. If you look at the fish per trip relative to some of other species, it's still low, but relative to other species, we also stock a lot less. This species, we think, currently relies mainly on stocking, and there's a low level, if nominal, natural reproduction of this species. So it seems like some of the changes we made are working. In the lake, we had a management plan target of around 2,000 fish, which was a modest target. In 2025, it was the first time we've exceeded that target, upwards of around 3,000 fish estimated caught in Lake Ontario. In our tributaries, we had a management target of around 1,000 fish in each of 4 priority tributaries: Oak Orchard, Salmon River, Sandy Creek, and South Sandy Creek. And we've had a little less success here. We still have some work to do, but in some of our tributaries, Sandy Creek, 1 out of the last 3 years, and then at Oak Orchard, 2 out of the last 3 years, the catch rates have reached that target. Fishing at Oak Orchard was so good that I actually caught a fish there. You see on the. Yeah, as people laugh, and if you're not you can see that I did it the easy way, and that's really the only way I could catch an Atlantic salmon, I must confess. in in Canada, they've been seeing returns to Lakefront Promenade. They've also, seeing increasing terms contributing to that fall recreational fishery. These stocking locations are also providing, again, access to those urban fisheries that I talked about in the beginning of my talk. Um, they're returning, these anglers are targeting returning fish from shore, kayaks, and boats, so near shore fishing opportunities right from the pier. And so we're pretty excited about that. Um, and then related to that is an assessment of, so they're stocking both, as I mentioned, spring yearlings and fall yearlings, and they're interested in understanding the success of those stockings, comparing the which provides a better return, fall versus spring yearlings. And they're also interested to know what the returns and where these fish go, whether they return to the where they stock them or whether their strength, some of the other tributaries. So they're conducting a study. 60 fall yearlings were acoustically tagged and then split between two sites. Um, they have receivers at Lakefront Promenade and Ganaraska River, so we're excited to see the results from that in the next few years. So, I mean, overall, I think the bottom line is fishing and quality in 2025 was good, above average for coho, brown trout, Atlantic salmon, about average for rainbow trout and Chinook salmon. Lake trout was below average, but we think that's a good thing. So, overall, we think fishery status it's pretty darn good in Lake Ontario. And that's it. Thanks.